Hey guys, this is Hell Hades. This is a Raid Shadow Legends video, and we have got a special guest along today. Nub Raids, Nub Kex. I always forget what you call yourself, dude. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I kind of call myself both.
Yeah,
If you ever want to laugh, you could turn on the automatic captioning on videos, and it
yeah.
never knows what to think. So often, nut braids is my favorite, which sounds kind of painful, but there you go.
Nice. Well, for those that don't know you, obviously you've been around for a while now. Probably
Mm.
made your name in Hydra, but just give people a little bit of an introduction to yourself.
Sure. So I think I've been, yeah, it's coming up near enough on 6 months now of covering Raid. I
Wow.
used to
Yeah.
cover games like World of Warcraft and Heroes of the Storm before that on a different channel. But I started up the Raid channel, and yeah, it kind of just took off a bit doing the Hydra stuff because
Sure.
pre-Hydra nerf, I was one of those weird people that actually quite liked it. So uh, yeah, I tend to do that. So kind of trying out different champions. I like to do a lot of off-meta champions as well, like finding champions that people don't really use and going, okay, what can I actually do? Does it actually do something useful
Yeah,
for
nice.
people? And especially when it comes to Hydrix, it is that new content. Being like, okay, like for example, I just got a video out today with Jizzo, who's the 2-week login
I
reward,
saw
who's
that. I saw that.
completely useless until now. And
Yeah.
someone left, I didn't even figure it out at all. It was someone left a comment on my video being like, yo, dude, you didn't mention Jizzo. And I was like, wait, what? He has a 2-turn provoke. So yeah, it was like, okay,
Yeah.
let's.
You know what's interesting about Jizzo as well is because he puts buffs on people.
Yes, he
You can
does.
actually like direct the like a resistance tank, can't you,
Yeah,
for stealing buffs as well? Yeah, it's actually
yeah,
a kind of
yeah.
cool niche pick in a way, but I still can't get myself to like Shizzo. I'm sorry. Uh,
He looks cool, but yeah, yeah, I don't know.
yeah, yeah. Well, anyway, look. So for today's video, we're going to talk about mistakes you want to avoid in Raid Shadow Legends. So there's a lot of them. Honestly, as we kind of go through the game, it's going to be quite an expensive game to make mistakes in. And and if you're actually a free-to-play player, it can actually be quite detrimental to your account to make early mistakes. So between myself and Nub here, we're going to go through and just kind of call out some of the big ones, the clangers that you want to avoid. So I'm going to kick us off. I'm going to kick
Yeah.
us off, and I'm going to kick off with probably what I think is the most important one to avoid, and that is wasting your books. Now, it's probably a bad example because I'm on my main account here and I've got almost like endless books,
Mm.
especially epics and rare books. But if I was looking at my free to play account, which is about 100 days in, I've got 0 epic books, I've got a couple of rares, and I've got legendaries only because I don't own a legendary champion yet. And I remember back when I first started playing Raid, I used to throw in the odd legendary book into an epic champion
No.
because I wanted to max their books out faster.
Mm.
Yeah, and then I'd be like, damn, I'm actually gonna have to buy one of these book packs to keep going. And I spent more money on book packs than anything else in the game. More money on book packs than
Uh,
shards or anything else in my early game with Raid, to the point
mm.
where I was kind of like getting to the end of the month and I'm like close to tears with the amount of money I just spent
Yeah.
on Raid Shadow Legends. So have you had experience like that with books at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely tough. Like I was pretty much free to play pretty much for the first few months, and then I just did the monthly gem pack for a while to help
Yeah.
with fusions and things like that. So I never bought a book pack, but definitely I can tell you, like, you are so tight for books for most of the game. Like the renewable sources of legendary books, really, you're looking at Nightmare, Ultra Nightmare, Clan Boss, and then Hard Doom Tower.
Yeah.
It's really like, and that's far into the game. So if
It's
you
end
come
game
in,
stuff, isn't it? Yeah.
it's end
Yeah.
game, yeah. So if you come in and you start spending all your legendary books early, you can get stuck trying to build your clan boss team so you can get some more, but then you just don't have the books to book out your champ. So like you finally get your arbiter and you're like, well, no books for arbiter, no books for Syl, whatever. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's tough. I never spent a legendary book on a on an epic though. I've
I
done it
mean,
with Chaosaur. I've
it's
spent
embarrassing, but I have done it. I've done
yeah,
it.
I spent some like epic Chaosaur, I think, maybe a 5-star legendary on like a rare reaction piece. I was like,
Yeah.
I want this for Mithrala or something like that. It's like
What
I'm just doing it. So I didn't quite regret that, but it's probably I will at some point. Gosh, they're
what's even
expensive.
worse is as I became a content creator, like through the years that I played the game,
Mm.
I got to a point where actually I was trying to build my best ever clan boss team, and I just completely ran out of legendary books, and there were no packs available. I did this live on stream. This is the only time I've ever done it. I bought one book from the actual shop at $21.99, and
That's brutal.
that's something I would never do again. So don't buy anything from this damn shop. Anyway,
No.
right, on to you one, buddy.
Okay,
What's your...
right. So, one I'll go for actually. There's one I think that you're gonna go for. I'll go for it if you don't go for it next. But I'm gonna go for one that's a bit somewhat newer to the game, which is in the Forge. You unlock the Forge pretty early on, and one mistake I've definitely seen people make is using their charms on that low rank gear. So if we go down to like Perception
Oh,
or
yeah.
something like that,
Yeah, okay.
um, because it's really hard to actually get the materials for that 5 to 6 star gear when you start out, you get really tempted. You've got these charms burning a hole in your pocket, in your inventory. You want to spend them, and you're like, yeah, I'll roll it on the 4 to 5 star gear. That's a
Yeah.
really big mistake, because you will get to a point when you get far enough in Faction Wars and you start doing Doom Tower where you will get 5 to 6 star gear, and you'll run out of charms really fast. They're super limited. Even for whales, for big spenders, super endgame players, getting the charms and stuff to actually build up your gear is really rare. It doesn't last. So yeah, you're gonna feel bad. I did it, and you're gonna regret it later on when you don't have the charms to actually build up the gear that you want. So watch
Yeah.
out for that early game.
No, absolutely right. The Forge is actually one of the best sources of like early game items, and even towards late
Yeah,
game. Actually, the pieces you
yeah.
can get out of the Forge can really help your account out. So, yeah, good
Nearly,
shout.
I say about 80% of my champions are just in perception gear. To be honest,
Yeah, definitely. Like if I think about my free to play, every single champion has got a set of perception on, even if it's like 4-star perception. It's so
yeah,
strong.
so good. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But and then when you get to late game and you're trying to build out, people that are there to take down like the best players in the game. I'm trying to see if I've got an example just floating around. But you tend to look for,
yeah,
especially perception gear, to
mhm,
massively build up crazy stats. And
yeah.
it's definitely one to look out for. Okay, so look, I'm going to move on to
Mhm.
kind of a similar theme to the books, really, and it's just one to watch out for. Don't feed all of your epic champions because you're so desperate to level up that one other champion.
Mhm.
If and there's a couple of like real and definitely don't feed a legendary champion, even if everywhere you look tells you they're a bad champion. Someone sent me a screenshot the other day, and they said, "This is my champion pool. I don't know who to 6-star next." And they had Growhack. And Growhack, again, I don't know if I got him here. Growhack is notoriously kind of talked about as being a terrible, terrible legendary champion. And but on this account, he was that person's best champion. Normally, a legendary champion is still going to be better
Mhm.
than some of your kind of epics that you've got lying around. So, and the other thing with a legendary champion is there is a reasonable chance over the course of the next 12 months that if they are terrible, they
Mm.
will get some sort of buff.
Yeah.
A reasonable chance, not with all
Yeah.
of them, but it's
They've been
it's
doing that
definitely,
more
yeah,
recently, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, what's your next one?
Yeah, I actually very quickly, I just remembered, like my first ever legendary was Tomb Lord, and this actually
Hmm.
combines those 2 points. With the books I got, he was my MVP and clan boss back in the day, and this was before he was buffed, so he wasn't quite as good.
Yeah.
But I had him, and his A3 was fully booked, his A2 was fully booked, and then his A1 was missing one single book in it. And I was looking at that 10% damage, going, oh, and I pulled a duplicate Tomb Lord, and I used the
Ah,
duplicate to level up the skill. And then, of course, Tomb
so,
Lord got buffed. Then the duplicate system came out in the Guardian Ring. And
yeah.
yeah, I'd forgotten, I'd sealed off that memory. And now you just reminded me, and now I feel kind of bad about
Yeah, yeah, and
it.
especially when you've got content now where you might actually make use of two.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hydra depends what type of account you've got, but you've got
Mm,
the Guardian ring, but you've also got content where you might just prefer to use two of them in different teams for stuff like Hydra or 3 versus 3 arena. So
yeah.
yeah, don't feed your legendary champions and even your epics. You're
Mhm.
there's plenty of examples where your epics that you think are no good will absolutely be in your faction war team for a while. So yeah, feeding champions to progress, not always the right thing to do.
100%. 100%. Okay, next one I'll talk about then is actually going into the arena. And I actually saw an example of this, I think, in a video I was recording yesterday with Romantu, maybe.
Okay.
And I saw this in Goal 5, actually, believe it or not. Classic mistake. It's someone not speed tuning their arena team. So it's sort of an advanced thing in a sense. There's like arena speed tune calculators on Deadwood Jedi site, for example, that are really helpful. But the idea of a speed tune team is essentially that you've got someone like an arbiter or an apothecary or a Haikatoon that fills turn meter, and then you calculate based off their speeds what the next person needs to be to go straight after. Um, so, for a double speed team, you'll typically have two of these turn meter fills. You have like an arbiter into a seeker or Lady Kimmy or Lysandra or something like that. They'll both speed boost, and then you can have a really slow nuker or a debuffer. But people who don't speed tune their team, you can leave yourself in a really tough spot. I went up against someone, he had an arbiter, he had a Madame Ceres, he had a Trunda. I'm looking at those first three going, this is pretty scary. And then his
Yeah.
fourth champion was a Duchess. Which
Right.
and you can see why he did it, because if you were to say, just off the top of your head, like, what's the best defensive champion in the game for Arena? Duchess would be one of the first ones that everyone would be saying, so that's why you put her in. But the Duchess didn't actually fit into that team at all, so his Arbiter filled the turn meter, his Madame Ceres was speed tuned, she stripped all my buffs, his Duchess then came in and put, Perfect Veil and stuff on his team, but then there was no speed boost, so Trunda was standing there, and then I got to go and was like, all right, grand. Arbiter go, Romantu strip all their buffs off. My team then put them to sleep and was ready to go and just blow them up. Like,
Yeah. So basically, your team
yeah,
was able to cut in when really it just should never have been able to.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's a huge mistake. Like, he would, instead of putting in Duchess, who is in theory the best defensive champion in the game, he would have been better off with like a Canelia, uh,
Yeah.
someone doing an AoE sleep, just speed tuned in to sleep him and leave my team not able to do anything until his nuker could take their turn. Uh, so yeah, I think Cold Brew. I think I was watching a Cold Brew video a good while ago, and I think he was saying that, in his opinion, you're probably actually better off having a slower team overall if they are speed tuned. It's actually better to have a speed tuned team than having like your arbiter be maybe 5 speed faster than that, but your speed tune isn't there and you get cut in on and your team falls apart.
Sure.
So yeah, there you go.
Interesting. Yeah. It's actually, I mean, following on from that point,
Hmm.
so I was going to talk about early game gearing,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
one of the worst things I see when I take over people's accounts or just give people a bit of coaching or advice is champions are incredibly slow,
yes,
or
yes,
champions that have got incredibly low accuracy when they have abilities that basically any ability here which is in red, which is a
yeah,
debuff, any of those, unless it says cannot be resisted, has to have accuracy to do it. And the amount of
uh-huh.
accounts I jump on and I'm like, they've got all matching sets. Yeah, it'll be like, oh yeah, it
Yep,
looks pretty. They all look the same,
yeah,
but
yeah,
they are incredibly slow champions, which means they won't rotate through their skills. And then when they
hmm,
do get to use their skills, they've got no accuracy and nothing they do works.
hmm,
And people wonder why they can't progress through the game. And it's like the two most basic things are missing. So,
yeah,
for this video, I would just say my advice to everybody who's perhaps a bit newer is always give your champions speed boosts
yeah,
as a base. Once you get more experienced in the game, you might change that up, and then speed boosts aren't necessary. But if you're not hitting 170 speed as a minimum on every champion, then they all need speed boosts, and you need more speed in your gear rolls. And if you're not hitting, this is this is a bit old, but still kind of works for me. If you're not hitting accuracy levels to at least 10 times the dungeon you're fighting. So if you're fighting dungeon 10 in Dragon, you want 100 accuracy. If you're fighting
mhm,
dungeon 15 in Dragon, 150. Then you don't have enough accuracy to do the basic job of what you need to do. And if you can get those two things right, actually, you'll just find that the rest of the stuff will just progress through much easier.
yep,
So I know gearing is something where, gearing's hard. Gearing's actually quite tough in this game because there's certain levels of knowledge that you go through But if you can just get those two fundamentals right early, then you will enjoy this game a lot more.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was on an account takeover recently for a fairly early game player, and he had everyone built, I think, with 100% crit rate. It was actually kind of impressive.
Right.
Everyone had that full crit rate, but like you said, he didn't have the. He was really slow. He didn't have the accuracy. And just doing like a quick switch up of his gear for him, even throwing in a bunch of gear like at level 12, not fully rolled up, but
Yeah.
getting the speed and accuracy, he came back and was like, I just did my clan boss key and they just did, 50% more damage than they'd done before. Just straight up
Exactly
like
that.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huge difference, like huge difference. All right. Will I go next then? Or
Yeah, you go. Yeah, I kind of cut in there with an
yeah, no
extension, I
worries.
guess.
No, you're good. You're good. I don't know if this is a mistake a lot of people make, but this was a mistake that I made, which is trying to build too many champions at once when I started out.
This was going to be my
So,
next one. Yes,
oh,
yes.
was it? Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
go for it.
But yeah, like especially with faction wars, right? You're trying to you've got all those slots in your faction war teams, and then you get some random rare who's terrible, and you're like, oh, but that's gonna fill in that slot in my faction war team that doesn't have anyone in it. This is great. And then you invest time, you get them up to like 30 or 40, you start throwing some gear on them, and you're just wasting so much silver, so much time, so many resources. Ultimately for pushing up in that faction war stuff, for example, you're really looking at supports, like supportive champions. Level 50 can work, but they're going to need good gear. And then for damage dealers, they really want to be level 60.
Yeah,
These level 40 rares that are terrible that you're going to replace when you pull better champions, because you will. It's just you're sinking those resources in. And yeah, I did so much of that and it was a mistake. I sometimes see them, when I'm clearing out gear or whatever.
yeah,
I see these old champions in like gray gear and stuff at random levels in my vault, and I just sort of I face palm a little bit with
yeah.
embarrassment. So
100%. Especially, I think it's even more relevant if you are coming into the game or coming through the game. Don't focus on getting a lot of champions to 50
yeah,
versus getting one champion to 60.
mm,
Like, once you've got a 60, the game becomes easier. And then from there, you've actually just got to get more 60s. More 60s. Like you say, some champions can work at 50,
hmm
but ultimately, if you don't have you know, at least a group of 5 or so level 60 champions, then the game's pretty damn tough to
yeah,
progress in. And again, similar to what you said there, I see a lot of people with 1050s and they're saying, I don't know why I cannot get further in this game.
yep,
And it's like, you just need 160. Like, 160 is the way forward, and then
yeah,
more. So, yeah,
yeah.
really good point. Really good point.
You see that in early arena, don't you? Like when you make a new
Yeah.
account, and then when you get that first 60, you see all the players who have the 450s of like legendary champs at 50, and you're just like, no problem. And you start blasting through those teams with just one or two 60s. It's like they just can't compete. And
Yeah.
they're frustrated.
Well, I'm going to talk about gem burning.
Oh,
So, gems are. There's actually. There's more ways to get gems in Raid than there's ever been. So, as a free to player, you can actually get a reasonable amount of gems throughout a month. And you can kind of hold on to them and use them as you will. But what I would suggest is don't, and actually you might have a different take on this to me, but
hmm.
early players I suggest should buy, don't spend any gems, literally just buy masteries on your first level 60, then
Hmm.
buy masteries on your second level 60, and then you can start to make decisions. That's the way I suggest it. And I think if you're going to play the game for a good while, the gem mine will pay you back.
Yeah.
I personally do not value spending gems in the sparring pit for someone who doesn't want to spend money. I think it's
hmm
a fairly low return for the amount of gems that you spend. And I absolutely, and this is the most tempting thing to do, by the way, I don't suggest you go into this beautiful shop in the bottom left, into the gem shop,
Buying the
and
shards.
buy the big shard pack, or even worse, buy the small shard pack whenever you've
I
got
did
enough
that.
gems to do so.
Yeah,
It's
I used to do that.
and I think honestly, I think most people do that. Most
Yeah.
people do that, and then you know
Yeah.
what they do? They pull the shards straight away when there's no
No.
event on. There's no reason to pull. Like,
Oh
this game
no.
benefits you from using resources at specific times, like
Yep.
massively. And if you're going to do that crazy thing of wasting your gems on that shard pack because you
hmm
absolutely just need the rush of pulling some shards, at least wait for a champion chase tournament or a summon rush or some other reason to pull shards, or a 2x event where you actually get a better odds of pulling good champions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gem burning, I see it all the time. It's like, how do you have gems on your free to play? It's like, well, I don't spend them until something is coming up in which I actually think I'm going to need them for. And generally, once I've done that kind of gem mine and 2 sets of masteries, generally I will spend them on energy. Refill on energy, because what do I need? Going back to the last point, I need more level 60 champions, not more champions to try and get to level 50 from pulling shards. So
yeah, pretty much. I think you can buy a small amount of those shard bits with the gems, but I think like super early game, if you're super strapped for champions, like you just don't
it
have
makes some
anything good,
sense.
maybe. Or I think as well, when you are early game, you don't have that many shards and you're doing like a champion chase tournament. So during your 2x summon event, if you can spend like maybe 800 gems, or no, sorry, 900, I think, for the big pack,
Yeah,
and
900.
that can, if that can push you up to like getting a legendary book, for example, then I think that is worth it. But yeah, it's like very rare and pretty much just maybe at the very start of the game. But you do, it does have a big opportunity cost. Like you lose out on a lot of energy, like you said, which is masteries at 6-star champions, like stuff that's gonna 100% let you progress. Whereas buying the shards is like a
It's the
gamble. It
gamble, isn't
might,
it? Yeah.
it might not. It's fun, but
Yeah.
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 Okay, I've
Well,
got.
I think if you do one last one for us, give us
Yes.
one
Okay, good.
to leave the video on. Let's have a big one.
I only have one last one.
Oh,
So
perfect.
this last one is, I think, skipping fusions. I think that is a mistake that is really easy to make. And I know lots of people have made it, like, because it's hard to tell how good a champion is. Like, if I'm not mistaken, I think, did you skip, was it one of the dwarves, was it?
I didn't
Trying to
skip.
remember.
Do you mean Brog? I skipped Herndig. Yeah, I skipped
Yes, turned.
Herndig.
Yeah,
Yes.
you skipped Herndon.
And
I think,
I am sad that
yeah,
I skipped Herndig. Yeah,
yeah, it happened. Or like, I think Ash skipped Brogni,
that's
you
right.
know?
Yeah.
Like it's easy to have, and especially like if you're really busy doing other stuff in life, or like I almost skipped this, the guy who's just gone. I almost
Yeah.
skipped Bivald, very almost, because I was on holiday. I was on vacation during it,
Sure.
so it's like, oh, I might just skip it just to not have to worry about it. And I ended up doing it because we were sick for most of the holidays. We had lots of time, so we ended up doing them anyway. And I was glad, because then, hey, the Hydra changes came in and Bivald is suddenly amazing for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can be really tough to judge how good a champion is, like without people actually, a lot of people getting to play with them for a while. Like I know I find it really difficult to judge. Um, and yeah, if you can easily end up regretting it. I think if it's very difficult for you to do a fusion, like if you're early on, or if you don't have the time, like legitimately, then that's fine. But I think for people that they have the time and they're enjoying the game and they're playing it, and it's like they can easily do the fusion, but they're like, I don't know if the champion's good. I recommend basically always doing it. I mean, for Guardian Ring alone, for building up your faction guardians and potentially being able to empower champions eventually, I think for that alone, it's worth it. But yeah, I mean, even the terrible fusions and stuff,
Yeah.
um, let's say Virgum Car, who's just never really been useful for anything. That was before I started playing, but I know that, a lot of free to play players, for example, would have found him really helpful for actually beating faction wars, that sort of stuff. So,
Yeah. So the only counter I would say to that, and so I
yeah,
agree. Like if you've got the resources to do it, you absolutely should do a fusion, because you never know when. Again, if a champion might be buffed, you never know if a champion new content might drop that they're specifically good for.
yeah,
But I just skipped Bivald on my free to play,
because it's
and
hard.
well, just because I literally looked at the first couple of events, and it was mainly
Yeah,
down to shard count, and
yes,
I
yeah,
worked it out, and I just thought, you know what, I cannot do this fusion.
yeah,
There's absolutely no way I'm going to be able to do it. And so I made the decision super early that I'm not going to throw myself into that. And then I pushed my resources into some of the other things we've spoken about, getting another level 60 champion, farming masteries, and absolutely moving my account forward. And I do see a lot of people say, I go for every fusion and then I never get any. And it's kind of like,
yeah,
well, it's probably because you go for every fusion and you don't have the ability to get any. So if actually you looked at one and thought, you know what, it's impossible for me to do it because I can just see I don't have a means to get the shards, and I
Yes.
don't have a shard count, then I would say don't go and spend all those shards midweek when you're bored. Save them for the
Yeah.
next one when you absolutely. There's no way, even as a free to player, there's no way you won't have the resources every other fusion.
Hmm.
And even really, if you start to hit Nightmare Clan boss, by that point you should be able to do every single fusion if you hold resources for the right type of time. But yeah,
Yeah.
I would say just kind of temper it with actually do some work and understand, like, is it possible or not?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, yeah.
I've got one little bonus one.
Oh,
Shout
go
out
for it.
to my girlfriend, right? First ever fusion she ever, quote unquote, air quotes here, completed, I think was Vlad. She had everything
Oh
done.
yeah.
She had everything ready to fuse. We were out for a walk.
Oh
She
no.
was looking at her phone and she said, "Where's the fusion gone? Where's it gone?" I said, "You didn't fuse him?" She said, "No." So it ended yesterday.
Oh no.
It ended last night. So there you go. There's another mistake. Be careful with the fusion and fragment events. And she's done it like twice more as well. She's missed events and stuff on the very last day after doing everything and then forgetting to do like artifact enhancement or grinding out that last 100 points in dungeon divers, and you miss the fragments or you don't have quite enough to get over the line. And that's one of the most,
That's a
it's
brutal
pretty
one.
soul
Yeah.
destroying. It's hilarious for me and it's soul destroying for her. So just be
Yeah.
careful. There you go.
Brilliant. Well, look, everybody, I hope you've learned something new today. Hopefully, you can avoid some of these mistakes and have a more enjoyable experience of Raids as you kind of come up through the game. I've been Hell Hades. This has been Nub Raids. I will post Nub's channel down below, and we're also going to do a collab on his channel. So I will ping a kind of video link to that. Nub Raids, anything to say as a kind of parting gift?
No, just thanks very much for having me on the channel. It's been a great time as always.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. We'll see you later.